It's November 12th, called Economic Development Commission meeting to order. Did everybody have a chance to look at the minutes?
Yes.
Any changes or comments? Motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. I'm going to be reading the reports for the Farmington Valley Visitors Association and Main Street. Sarah is on vacation. The Farmington Valley Visitors Association report is their 8th annual Haunted Miniature Golf fundraiser was a success. She'll be receiving the final number shortly. Halloween Day turned out to be one of the highlights of the experience as we had Halloween candy at all 19 holes. Many of our little golfers' parents read the press release and brought their children in costume with official trick-or-treat bags to collect their candy. A good time was had by all. November lecture, a train ran through it, is scheduled for November 19th. Ann Hall will be talking about how the railroads illustrate the competitive hopes of industrial and political leaders in the Civil War era, how an emerging technology grew through accidents and experimentation, and how this impacted the Farmington Valley inhabitants. The lecture takes place at 2 o'clock at the Simsbury Historic Society's Ellsworth Center. Final drafts are being reviewed for our 2016 Guide to Connecticut's Farmington Valley. The guide will be out in early December and distributed shortly thereafter. Lastly, we're planning for 2016 and we'll be strategizing and streamlining our goals, objectives, and events and be ready to begin implementation in January. If anybody has any questions for Nancy, they can email them, and they're going to need to put bigger fonts on these when I print them next time because I can't see them. Main Street, right now they're focused on their 2nd annual Shop Simsbury event. Last year, Main Street partnered with American Express to become a neighborhood champion. We organized an event for Black Friday, Small Business Saturday, where participating businesses would offer $50 gift cards for $40 during these 2 days. This resulted in thousands of dollars staying in town. They're doing it again this year and have invited the Chamber to join us. They will once again be running the gift card special on November 27th and 28th. Also new this year is the Passport to Fun. Pick up a passport at a participating business and visit 8 businesses during those 2 days and be entered to win an overnight stay at the 1820 House, dinner for 3 at Metro B, and a Pinchot Sycamore pendant from Sarah Burns. Please support our event by shopping Simsbury over the holidays. A full list of participating businesses is going out in a mailer to all town residents next week. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about those? We need to, next thing on the agenda is voting on the 2016 meeting calendar, which you guys received as part of the agenda for today. Does anybody have any comments or change?
April 14th, that's spring break week. I don't know how that affects any commissioners, but it will possibly affect me, that's all.
I can happily say it will not affect me next year.
It's my birthday, too.
Oh, well, happy birthday.
So I may take off.
August 11th, the cable guy's coming. I can't.
Okay.
Yeah,
Between 9 and noon.
9 and 3. Yeah. Gotta go.
Do I have a motion to approve the dates?
So moved.
Motion.
Second.
Yeah, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Update from the First Selectman's Office. Mr. Cook?
Very brief, as you know, things were busy the last few weeks, but with that behind us, we do have, of course, I think one important thing to report, and that is that James Rabbit has been hired as the next Director of Planning and Community Development. So Jamie has 26 years. He comes from the southeastern corner where he worked for the COG, a number of different towns. One of the things that he's done very well for a long time is to work with multiple boards in multiple locations. So I can say that on that front, his communication skills are very good. He's done a number of POCDs, which the timing of that's important too, because we've got one coming up right now. So very excited about that. We're in the process of setting up some informal meetings with zoning and planning folks so that the person is known before the first meeting. So that's probably the biggest piece of news from our front. The First Selectman and I did meet with Big Y. The answer right now is, for why very little is happening, is that there are apparently a number of sales going on in the world of supermarkets. They are potentially going to be in a position to do some acquisitions in Massachusetts, and they are withholding their capital for the time being to see how that all plays out. That's basically what I got to report on that. Finally, the Business Development Committee met twice on the request for the abatement for Chestnut Hill for the Ena Mansion. They ended up recommending an abatement of up to $300,000 based on the preservation of the mansion. That's they were very clear that that was the public interest in doing this, as opposed to a larger development of residences. That has gone to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen accepted that recommendation. The folks who are applying have suggested that maybe they need a little bit more. They are looking into that. There's an option to consider whatever they come back with. In the meantime, the town council is working with council for the mansion to come up with a contract, which will have all kinds of requirements in it, from clawbacks to making sure that the right preservation easements are in place. We actually, the timing was interesting. We went to the CCM annual meeting where the issue of abatements came up, and the speaker just happened to have a draft contract for abatements, so we got a head start on that, and some good information. I think there's, in all cases, I was hearing a real concern about the precedential effect of this, and so that, I think, is being addressed in the contract as well as in comment on it. So that's what I got to report from the First Selectman's office.
Tom, back on our new Mr. Rabbit.
Yes.
Coming in, when does he start?
He will be starting on the 23rd of November.
How many candidates did you have for that post?
We had probably, we had north of about 15 applicants. We interviewed 4. Frankly, all 4 of the people we interviewed were well qualified. One of them ended up withdrawing when our friends in Canton upped his salary.
Say that again?
One of the candidates was out of Canton. A guy by the name of Neil Page is very, very good, but he ended up staying in Canton when Canton readjusted his salary. Frankly, Jamie was our first choice. He has extensive experience. He drove in and he looked at the green and blue Pride awning, and his first comment was, "I was kind of surprised that got here." He I think has a pretty good feel for what the town look is, if you will, the town preferences are. So I think probably one of the key strengths for him is that he listens very well. So very, very excited. He certainly has the technical skill set to do this.
How old is he? Rough.
The way I'd answer that is I'd say he's probably got about 10 or 15 more years in his career.
He won't be retiring.
He won't be retiring in the near future, so this is very, right now, I wanted somebody who could deal with the big boys. We've got the Hartford coming on, the Silverman Group is going to, they're wonderful people, but I'm sure they're going to be very aggressive for what they want, and we need somebody who's in a good position to push back hard, if needed.
Do you have any update on the town website? Is there any new news?
No new news that I can think of. We're still plugging the photo competition, but I don't have an update from either Sean or Rick at this point. I can get one.
Just be interested to know when we're going to beta testing.
Right.
On that.
Let me see if I can find that out, Chris.
Tom, on another subject, but it ties in with the vast number of new apartments that are coming into the town. We all know about those and what's going on. But going to breakfast down, Benny, who's doing a nice renovation job down there. And I guess there's some kind of a problem with the sewer commission and getting an allocation so we can get through or something. How do people, the sewer commission's a separate taxing entity, I think, right?
Correct.
How do people get onto the sewer commission? Are they appointed?
They
or
are appointed, yeah.
By whom?
By the Board of Selectmen.
The Board of Selectmen appoints them?
Mhm.
Okay, well, when people come before the zoning guys with a project, in the old days, going way back, if it's a new project that was coming in and they file an application, the zoning guys would require that they would have a letter from the water company saying, yes, we can service that. Do they have the same kind of requirement for the for the sewer guys?
I'm not sure technically how it works, Dave, but in fact, that there is a separate negotiation that takes place with the
Oh, I know
with the
that.
guys, yeah.
But the negotiation, I'm trying to see if it should not be done before the zoning guys approve.
You know what, that actually goes back to one of the recommendations that the Economic Development Task Force is making. That has more to do with sort of a flow chart approach to how we go about this. One of the things we're going to be doing with Jamie is to sit down and just say, look, what's really important here is, right now we have zoning and planning, we have two, who knows, we may end up with one, a charter revision is looking at it now. But one of the things that's been problematic in the past is just the sequencing of meetings, so that people who are ready to go end up spending 3 months going through a process which could be theoretically 1 month if you lined them up right. So I think that's part of what we're going to get Jamie to look at first thing, is just how to sequence these things. And it would seem to make sense that the water pollution control piece would come first. There are, I've had a couple of discussions with people who are indicating that the flow allocations are being done on a formula that's fairly old. We have now a number of situations where land which was certainly, well, I'm going to avoid all technical terms if I can, parcels that had been allocated large flow amounts that have changed their purpose and no longer require that. So there may very well be excess capacity out there. The long and the short of it is we don't want this to be one of the issues that ends up dragging out a valid business proposal. I'm going to ask a group to meet probably next week, folks from the Water Pollution Control and a couple of folks from town have mentioned this, just to see what options we have in terms of the way the allocation is currently set.
And aren't there other towns who use some of our capacity?
Absolutely, Avon certainly.
Right.
And,
So if another town is using our capacity and it's preventing one of our own businesses from expanding or going forward, that seems...
yeah, I think we have...
And I don't know what contractual relationships they have with the other towns.
And nor do I, Chris, but my understanding is that most people feel we have plenty of capacity right now. So all the more reason that we should have a system that isn't all that burdensome. So we're working on that.
Can you go back to my favorite subject, the Big Y? Did they contact you? Did you contact them? Is it through the Valley Press? Well, what's going on with that?
No, in this particular case, we did get a call from them. And
From Demore?
Yeah, from Matt, exactly, yeah. And he basically explained to us what I just told you, which is that they're looking right now at some potentially major capital layouts. And so that's the current position from them. I do not have a date.
No, well, but the land has transferred, I believe.
That's correct.
Okay.
I mean, everything is set to go, and my only participation in that transaction was a couple of times I had to get everybody to the table to talk to one another, to get through some of the easement issues, but we did manage to get that done. So
The expression in the parlance of the commercial guys is it's called land banking.
Well, I'm not sure, again, I'm not sure what their motives are here. I think, what I hear from them is they have every intention of building. It's a capital flow issue right now.
Yeah, well, that goes back 5 or 6 years, so you're right. Thank you.
Certainly.
Anything else in the First Selectman's office?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the task force final recommendation. Nancy apologizes for not being here today, she's ill. The first thing I'd like to say is the commission's coming to, the task force is coming to an end of their responsibilities. I want to thank them for all their hard work, including Carolyn and Lou, who also who've been sitting on that since the beginning. And they've produced some great recommendations that we have all seen and approved throughout the process. They are making a presentation to the Board of Selectmen on November 23rd at 7. Is when the Board of Selectmen
Correct.
meeting starts, I believe. And I would encourage as many of us to go as possible so we can support the recommendations that all 3 of the groups of the task force have recommended. So the Board of Selectmen understands the importance of all the work that was done. I know that it's been presented to them in pieces at various times, process presented on Monday, their recommendations, and that speaks to what you were talking about with the planning and zoning and all of that. But the full presentation is going to be on the 23rd. One of the recommendations from the task force is that the EDC form subcommittees to continue the implementation of the recommendations in each of the subgroups, and that is the next thing on the agenda. Does anybody have any questions about the presentation that's going to happen at the Board of Selectmen, or comments about the task force work or anything?
Are we going to get a report? Or?
We are going to get a report. She had intended to have it to us prior to the meeting, but she's been ill for a few days. They're pulling together a PowerPoint presentation, and we should have it before the Board of Selectmen's meeting.
If I may, Chris, Charter, I also have the pleasure of supporting the Charter Revision Commission because it beats sleeping. And they met last week, and Bill Ethier was there to speak. They talked about the combination of planning and zoning, which is one of the recommendations from the process group. Bill was there to speak about that. Both Bill and Kevin Crimmins were at the Board of Selectmen meeting on Thursday and walked through all the process recommendations.
Okay. So the recommendation is to have the members of the EDC form 3 subcommittees, and I just want to open that up for discussion so we can talk about what our thoughts are on that. And we obviously don't need to decide today who's going to be on what, if that should be approved, but does anybody have any thoughts or comments or?
What are these subcommittees?
Well, there's
gonna do?
3 groups in the task force. There's marketing, process, and programs, and each of those subcommittees in the task force is putting forth recommendations that, because the task force, as of December 1st, I think, is no longer a group, it comes back to us as a commission for us to implement and continue to move forward these recommended changes in each of the subcommittees. And without us forming subcommittees and continuing the work of the task force, the document becomes just dead in the water, and it just doesn't go anywhere. And certainly would hate to see any of that happen after all the hard work and great recommendations coming out of the task force. We need to continue moving it forward. Some groups may need to meet more often than others, like marketing, because the website and the EDC website, we're just at the beginning of getting all of that in place in terms of getting things live and all of that. We tend to meet more often than, say, programs, where there's not a lot involved in there, and a lot of that work has already been done. It's just kind of revisiting some of those things periodically to make sure they're still relevant, and is there anything that we need to do. At the end of each presentation, section of the presentation, there's going to be recommendations, but one of the big recommendations coming out of the task force is that we have subcommittees supporting these recommendations and these subgroups from the task force.
Chris, these subcommittees, who would they be reporting to for a final decision? They'll be making recommendations, I can understand that, but what would that be going to, the selectmen or?
Well, to the EDC for full consideration, and then,
But
Some of it is
I
not
still-
necessarily recommendations, it's work that needs to
Well,
be
like
followed
what?
up on.
Like-
Well, the website's a great example, you know.
Don't put me on the photography.
We're not doing that, Dave. I'm not gonna ask you too
David
many
can be
phones,
separate big
pictures
Y
with your
one.
smartphones.
Get your arms around.
Yeah, but, for example, in, process, it's, you know, their recommendations about some of the charter review issues about merging planning and zoning and, all of that, just things that need to get followed up on. Process includes like the checklist we're supposed to be using when projects come in front of us. Is that still relevant? Does it need to be changed? Does it, you know, these can't just be recommendations that the task force gives us and then nothing's done with them. So it needs to be groups that, subcommittee groups that,
Yeah, but if they're important recommendations and people agree with it, why wouldn't they be done? Why do we have to continue
make
in
sure someone's
perpetuity
doing
this
Yeah,
thing?
point people, yeah, no, you know, to that point, you know, does it make sense to consider, you know, other potential subgroups and perhaps with respect to new business development? Or is it the view that that's kind of outside the purview of this commission?
What, the business development group?
Yeah, so I mean, if you know, we want to, so there's kind of a couple aspects to kind of economic development, right? You've got kind of supporting the existing community of businesses that we have in town and making sure, you know, kind of things work well for them. There's kind of land use types of development, and then there's also bringing in new businesses into town. You know, some on larger scales, perhaps some on smaller scales. You know, does it make sense to have people decked up to work on new business development? Obviously, it wouldn't be, you know, it wouldn't be driven by the Economic Development Commission, but to support the efforts of, you know, the First Selectman's office or, you know, or wherever the ultimate responsibility for getting new companies here, you know, have some folks support them.
One of the recommendations of the process is a more defined shift as to where that should be, where economic development should be within town hall, and making sure that it's not in the planning office, and making sure it's in the first selectman's office, and however that first selectman chooses to run it, deal with it, will have that purview. So that's one of those changes, so it would come out of that office, which we would support in some way, shape, or form. How they do that, how it's set up is right now not decided, but that the structure has been set up to at least allow something like you're talking about to occur in the future, so long as that whole process plan is accepted.
Yeah, so I mean, I think if it does go to the first selectman's office where it belongs, it would probably make sense to have, you know, a couple people from this commission to serve as some type of sounding board, to be to help with presentations as we're pitching companies to choose Simsbury. It would seem like that might be another potential subcommittee or group.
well, I think that's, to Lou's point though, that's up to, I think, this is what you're trying to say, that it's really up to the first selectman's office. Should the selectman adopt the recommendations in the process group, that it's up to the first selectman's office how she or he wants to run that part of the process and how they want to include various commission members or not into the economic outreach.
Well, I think slightly different. If adopted, and it's with the first selectman, I think it's a collaboration of this group
Right.
and the first selectman's office to determine how best to reach out to new businesses, what should be done, should there be a point person
Right, I
in
mean-
town hall, should it be a group here? There's different ways that it can be done, but I think we're a couple steps ahead. Your question is the subcommittees, and I think it's way too early for us to say anything until everyone understands what the different plans are within the marketing group, within the process group, within the programs group. So then we can decide, oh, I think that's an area that I would like to be involved in. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Because I can tell I know it because I've been a part of it, but I can tell there are people that are still what's in the process?
Right.
What's this a part of? Where do I fit in? So I think we can't decide that now. I think we have to see the whole plan, see what the selectmen adopt, and when we see the plan, that raises another question, and this was when are we going to get a proposal? We have yet to get the full proposal from the task force, which I believe was set up to run through us.
It was, yes.
Okay. So shouldn't this group determine whether it supports all of those items before it gets to the selectmen?
Well, all of the items that are in the proposal are things that have been endorsed by us throughout the process. I mean, we've all seen the marketing group piece of it. We've all seen process. Programs we saw a long time ago in terms of the items that they recommended. It's just what's being presented to the Board of Selectmen, as I understand it, is a summary of everything that's transpired that we've all seen.
Are they is it intended that the selectmen adopt these plans, that adopt the recommendations? Is that why they're going before them?
It's my question, yeah. Who do we report? What's it going to?
Well, that's my understanding. I can't speak for what, I wish Tom was here right now.
Well, Chris is here. Do you have
I
any?
mean, what's your understanding, Chris?
Well, certainly the first selectman, the board of selectmen have to implement the recommendations. So ultimately, whether we formally are adopting them or having a conversation, I'm not quite sure technically, but there's definitely an important stage of us endorsing and then moving forward, which would happen at the board of selectmen's level. I think what happens is, listening to the conversation, the most important stewardship we have of the process is actually implement it. And for each recommendation, there is a implementation step. And in some cases, I'm thinking, for example, the recommendations on the orientation for people on land use commissions and education, that may be that staff is putting that together, working with the chairman of the different boards, and that may not require a subcommittee. There are some that may require ongoing subcommittee work. And, Lou, to your point, I think it has, we're going to have to see what's being implemented, what subcommittees may need to exist, and then who's on those and how are they engaging with you.
Because I would think the task force has done a lot of work over the last 2 years. They've come up with a plan. I think it's a waste of time if it's not adopted and say, yes, we accept this. This is it. This is what the town is going to work towards.
Okay.
And before the selectmen do that, they should want to know whether this group, having been involved in it, seen it, helped recommend it 2 years ago, as to whether these are the items that we want to see move forward and have them adopt. I thought that's the way it was supposed to work, through us to the selectmen. And we say, here's the plan, they can present it, here's the plan, here's what we believe should occur.
Who would it make sense that we appoint one member, yourself or Chris, comes to mind, to work with the selectmen and say, what do you want, what do we want? To really define the mutuality of interest here before we go off and form zillion subcommittees and sub-subcommittees, so forth and so on. Let's get a very focused plan. This is what we want, this is what we expect from you
You're
guys.
saying after adoption?
Now, first step.
Before it's actually adopted?
I would think so. It seems potentially redundant until we get a clear definition of what the selectmen want, thinks to be needed, implemented, and what we can do. And I think from there, we can go forward.
I don't disagree. I would just say, to get a clear understanding, I would think this commission would say, we accept the entire report with emphasis on A, B, and C. I don't think it would occur, but we say we don't agree with this one, and it's just a recommendation. We present a letter or Chris or Mark speak on it and say, here's the report we received, you're going to be hearing it, Board of Selectmen, here's what we agree with, here's what we don't agree with. After that,
Yeah.
you can sit down and
I
collaborate as to who does
I
that.
don't disagree at all. It's
Okay,
just
good.
a matter of degrees and redundancies and,
Well, I agree that we should have a plan that works
Yeah,
together with
yeah.
the selectmen as to who will be implementing what portions, what's going to come first, who's going to work on it. I do think it's our job and
I don't
responsibility
disagree with that,
to
yeah.
make sure whatever we think should happen is being developed and is occurring. I think that's one of our main jobs, is to make sure whatever it is,
Right.
that we knock on someone's door and say, where's the orientation? Everyone agreed to have this done. How come it's not done yet?
Right.
And that's,
Well, it's really
that's
trying
our
to hold somebody
prerogative.
accountable to,
That's what I mean. That's what this,
Absolutely.
that's what this commission is really here to do.
Now, will the task force be asking the Board of Selectmen to adopt this in the November 23rd meeting?
That was my question. I would think so, but before that,
Right,
this commission
so
should
it almost says, gee, should there be a special meeting of this group to
To
kind of
just review that.
To review everything, and, to kind of review the document formally, hear the pitch, make any tweaks that, with the feedback of the full group, so that, kind of we're set up to do that.
Right.
It would hate to have it slip, because it would slip in, let's face it, it's gonna slip in the next year. Because once Thanksgiving comes, everything goes to hell, so. Right, does it make sense to do that? To have a,
I would think so. of some
well,
sort.
not to jump ahead in the agenda, but we spoke last year about having a special meeting regarding our budget presentation, because we always seem to do this at the last minute. Do we have a combination special meeting to review this document, like a working meeting for not only the budget, but this document, to review it, instead of at a commission meeting, have a special meeting to do both?
The budget can be done in our next meeting, our regularly scheduled one.
In December,
Yeah, our agendas have been fairly weak over the last
right.
4 months. I mean, we should get
Yeah,
stuff done here.
Yeah, yeah.
So I would say that, and you wouldn't want to combine them, they're two fairly important ones that you want to allow conversation, you want to be constricted by time. So I think the budget can be done in our December one. I don't see anything, unless there's something major on the horizon that's supposed to
That
come
I know
before us. Then if not, then I would just have a meeting on that. But I do think, I thought it was going to happen today, but if it's not going to happen today, then I think it should happen before the selectmen
See it.
review it, and
So
So is someone
I don't
making a
know. Hopefully
motion
it
to?
we're still waiting to see
I'm
the
making a
document, is that right?
Yes, yes, that's the point.
Well,
Yes.
where is the document?
On its way.
Well,
Nancy
why don't
Pelosi
we
was
get it and then
supposed
decide what we're gonna do
Nancy was
with
supposed
it?
to get,
But
she's
she's
ill.
well, all right, so let's look at the calendar, okay? So.
Well,
the
do we
Board
have
of
a motion first, that
Do.
somebody,
A motion for what?
a special meeting to
I have
review?
a motion for a special meeting to review the Economic Development's Task Force
Recommendation.
recommendations in advance of the Board of Selectmen meeting for consideration.
Do I have a second?
Second,
You have to say the whole thing.
second.
Can we have some
Get the
Do you have any
discussion?
Get the
discussion?
point.
Yeah, I got some discussion. I don't know why we're calling a meeting until we see the document.
Well,
We're calling a
see
meeting
the
to see the document.
And discuss the document.
yeah, so,
We can get it ahead of time, probably, that could be part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think
That you'd
we'll-
want it a week ahead to review,
Yeah.
but then
Right.
come here prepared to speak about it.
yeah, to Dave's point, I think, we need to have it ahead of time. So, all right, so the Board of Selectmen meeting is Monday, the
Oh,
23rd.
Hold on a second. So we had a second.
No.
Is there any more
Let's see it-
discussion?
Let's see it first.
Question before we get
Chris?
forward. What would the outcome of that session be if we didn't all of a sudden want to take a piece of it? I mean, it feels like it's already going to the board for this meeting. What does this special meeting achieve between now and then?
Good
Well, the
question.
special, correct me if I'm wrong, that it would be we're having input on what the final recommendations are from each of the subcommittees. And if we're in agreement or disagreement with any of them, prior to it going to the Board of Selectmen, that things can be revised, since the task force comes from us, should report to us, we should be able to have input on the final product.
True. I feel like about
Is
two
that
meetings
correct?
ago.
I think originally when the task force was set up, there was a lengthy discussion as to who they would report to and how it would work. That was a big part of it. And it was determined at that point that it would go through the Economic Development Commission.
Right.
If this is the final report, we have seen all of the pieces along the way. The purpose of the meeting is to put our stamp of approval on it and probably emphasize and categorize what we believe should be occurring first, or what emphasis we would like to put on it and recommend to the Board of Selectmen to start with. Some of them are with charter revision right now. We may recommend that we like that idea. It's in there. It's something we already talked about and agreed to. I don't see us changing or wordsmithing the document. That's been done and gone a long time ago. But it's putting our final stamp of approval, developing a plan that we can present to the Board of Selectmen along with their final recommendation. When the task force presents its plan, we can simultaneously say, we've reviewed it, we agree with it, we think these are the items that really need to happen sooner as opposed to later. We may say at this meeting that there's a couple things that we believe the EDC should keep hold of, and we can present that. So when the Board of Selectmen are done, my own opinion is they will have adopted a plan. They will have heard various recommendations from us, emphasis, sequencing, whatever it may be, and maybe say, okay, we'd like the EDC to start on this. We agree with them. They want to do this. They're going to do this. We agree that these are the next 3 things that we're going to accomplish over the next 6 months, whatever the case may be. I think that would be the ultimate home run, if you will, after the Board of Selectmen meeting. That's about as good as you could accomplish with this and with all the efforts of the people that did it for 2 years. I think you need that at the end of it. That makes it something that's going to be viable, something that has teeth, and everyone is on the same page. And I guess that's what we're trying to accomplish, is make sure we're on the same page, where whatever is agreed upon, that maybe the first 2 or 3 things to get accomplished, those would be the things we do.
And I have Carrie Viber, as soon as the document is completed, if Nancy was here, but she's not here today, send it to us by email. We all have a chance to look at it. Then we all can contact you or Chris, if Mark's back from vacation, to set up a meeting if necessary, to emphasize this. I think one person, either, I thought would be either Chris or you, Lou, they're familiar with this process, sitting down with a member of the board, the selectmen, and saying, this is it, this is what we'd like to, make an emphasis on. What's your thoughts? Where can we work together? What's the current focus of this? Then we have something. At least we have a commitment. But let's see it first.
No, I don't want to waste too much of our time because I missed last month's meeting, so if this gets into that conversation, I can definitely table it. But as my understanding, about 2 meetings ago, we all agreed on the plan that they had put together. Has there been a huge change in it since that group agreement? I thought we all looked at it a couple months ago and said, yes, we like what's going on here and we want to move
Did we look at the whole plan, or did we look at the last part of process, I thought?
And maybe that's the.
But we've
delta,
looked at,
We've
we
looked
looked at
at them all.
programs a long time ago. We've
Yeah.
looked at everything in pieces. We looked at programs a long time ago. We've looked at process.
Yeah.
Recently.
think that was the last one.
That was the last one we saw. And we
Yeah.
looked at marketing a long time ago. Nothing's really changed in any of those.
Just have Carrie send
It's
us
just
a copy.
merging of all the information into one document is what they're
I think 2 months ago, there
doing.
were a couple of things that we had recommended, I think they were minor, but I think they were implemented along the way. I can't recall for sure about that, but I thought
In process.
in the process part.
So
And then
pieces.
that went through and was completed. So now we have a document. I don't envision any of us saying, oh, you should change this sentence and this should.
Yeah, yeah, I mean-
That ship sailed.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not
clearly
recommending
this
any of
is-
that. I'm just recommending, okay, here's the document, our stamp is on it, and here's what we emphasize, here's what we think the Board of Selectmen should do with it. Because all the Board of Selectmen are gonna get right now is, here's the report, they're gonna get it explained to them, and then they have it. So, I think the important part, that was probably my fault.
Let's try it again.
that was your fault?
Your turn.
Well, it wasn't my name.
Town hall.
So really what you're asking is, let's just see the final product that's going to them.
And
Like,
have
all
a
the
cohesive-
pieces coming together.
See the final product,
Fair
but
enough.
have a cohesive
Yeah.
message and plan to the Board of Selectmen. That's all as
Yeah,
part
I
of it.
think, and I think we need another meeting to do that,
Right.
right? I
The,
mean,
the other way we could do it, and we can ask Tom, but the other way is reverse
walked in.
course at our December meeting. Review what we're talking about with this whole EDC task force report. Do it then, and then send it on to the Board of Selectmen where they can adopt it, later on. But I don't know
That would
if
make
that
sense.
works.
well, I mean, I guess it depends on what the goal is of the November 23rd meeting.
Exactly. I
If
would
the
agree.
goal is to kind of pitch them this conceptually and follow up with a document later, then I
agree.
think,
I agree.
that's fine.
We don't know
If
that.
our expectation is that the Board of Selectmen is going to vote to formally adopt something that should probably have the blessing of this group, then it sounds like we probably need to meet beforehand so we could go through the details, make any tweaks that we want to make to it, and then formally adopt it. So we could do that on the 23rd. I mean, it sounds like perhaps the latter might work, because would it be a stretch? Because, I mean, I haven't seen this thing in its entirety. Is it a stretch to make a pitch to the board of, a fair amount of detail, and then expect them to turn around and approve something that might be backed by a 50-page document that they haven't had an opportunity to review? I don't know.
Yeah.
Who has that answer?
That's the question.
Well,
Tom?
that's Tom and Chris.
Tom.
So in reality, if the Board of Selectmen hears the presentation on the 23rd without us having had the input on endorsing, in reality, would they be voting on it that night? Or are they going to say, you know what, this is too much to go over, we need to push this off to another meeting after we've had time to digest the information?
I would think that they would be looking for an endorsement, first of all, from you guys first, before whatever the final product is. That said, for something of the magnitude we're talking about, it's not uncommon for the board, and Chris can stop me anytime I'm off base here, to hear, to have somebody walk through it at one meeting and take action on it at the second meeting. That's certainly possible.
If that's the case, then they wouldn't be provided with a document on the 23rd. They get the pitch the 23rd, and then a document that's approved.
Well, I think they're going to get it. The
They're
Board of
gonna get the
Selectmen will have that document before the
Have to have it.
23rd.
Something in draft would.
I think I think the task force's expectation, they have their final document that would be presented to the board after whatever the appropriate approval is through you. And then we would be reviewing the document in detail, having a very good dialogue at the meeting, and basically saying, yes, we're going to go forward and integrate these pieces into the budget process. And part of what will have to be discussed is how things get implemented.
The
Something that I
question
can
is,
be
if-
formally endorsed, I mean.
If we haven't endorsed it because we haven't seen it, to be able to comment on it and endorse it or not endorse it, it goes to the Board of Selectmen without that, okay? And our next meeting's not until December, which is after the task force is no longer a task force. What's the,
Well, I
I
think
don't
a best
understand.
practice, I think a best practice is that you endorse it, you review
Right.
it, it comes from you. I mean, Lou kind of described what my
Right.
understanding was. But we've had pieces already that have come to us.
right, process was just at you last.
Correct.
We'll process, and then, I mean, the business incentive plan was actually an outgrowth of
Right.
that, and that. But long and short of it is, we're prepared to discuss it and seriously engage a conversation on the details and fairly concretely say, this is what we're gonna do, and begin to identify how we do it. So
So-
if you don't feel you have the appropriate approval here before that, then, I guess we'd have to discuss when it would appropriately be on the Board of Selectmen agenda.
Well, so we either have to have a special meeting as proposed prior to the Board of Selectmen's meeting, so we can be able to do that.
Right.
Or we need to request that the presentation to the Board of Selectmen is postponed until we've had an opportunity to do that.
I think either one is fine. Whether or not the EDTF is still extant, I don't think is really material at this point.
Okay.
I think you guys will take ownership. Ultimately, the recommendation coming from you is going to be the one that really carries the weight.
I propose that adding on to the motion, I guess it's still on the table, that can people do it on Friday the 20th in the morning? A special meeting?
Yes.
That gives us
The
enough time?
20th is
A week from,
Friday.
a week from tomorrow, which gives us some time to get it,
Yeah.
review
Yeah.
it.
This time?
Is
meet
there
on
gonna be
it,
enough
and-
time to, I guess the only concern would be, so if the Board of Selectmen meeting is that Monday,
Is that enough
we're not
time?
rewriting this.
No.
I know,
Oh, no.
But there's going to be some feedback. Is that enough time to get feedback implemented?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Chris and Lou have said the changes from the report we saw were minor. I accept that. And I don't think it will
was
take
more wordsmithing than-
hours to go over this. I think it will be just looking, here are the highlights, what do we think?
Yeah, I wouldn't
Fine.
propose that
Probably
we
take a
are.
half hour maybe.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the way I envision our meeting is discussing the three various sections at a little higher level. We've gone through the wordsmithing, we've had them come in, it's been vetted, it's been voted upon. This is the plan. We know what it is. We've all seen each part of it. So now we're getting the entire plan, and we're stepping up a level and looking at it and saying, okay, here's the plan, and here's what we emphasize, here's how we think it should work moving forward. It's our endorsement of it and how we think the Board of Selectmen, our recommendations to the Board of Selectmen as to, here's, to take this now, this document that already exists and everyone's worked on, and say, to make this useful and purposeful, here's what we should do, and send that along. And I think that conversation of what we think is important, you may think and want to put a lot of emphasis on one of the process items that deals with combining planning and zoning. Dave may say, that sequencing issue of making sure that they go to water pollution control and here before they get to zoning is crucial. And we should vet that and then say, Board of Selectmen, we think that the number one, the website is working. It's something that we believe the EDC should continue to monitor and work on, and we're going to set up a subcommittee. And on the process, we think that you should really, really look at A, B, and C. That's what we should do. That's what should be given to them. And then they can say, all right, here's the whole document. Yes, we like it. And now here's, we agree that the website has been worked on and they're doing it, and we're going to leave that to the EDC to continue. And on this part, we're going to have our new planning person come in, and our task to that person is to do this, this, and this. And that makes that document worth the last 2 years of 30 or so people's efforts. So that's what I envision happening at that meeting, and making the recommendation.
This is why we have these committees. We entrust members of the committee to put together a product. From what we've seen, it's spot on. Maybe someone wants to emphasize this, a little bit more of that, but it's basically done.
I agree.
Okay, so,
And let me continue. And if that is the matter we all feel strongly about, let's have the meeting on the 20th, if everyone can make it, and we oversee it. Looks okay, maybe this wants to be this a little bit more, and we'll present it. It shouldn't take hours, it should take half hour.
Okay, so do
It's
I
already
have
been done.
a second to the amended motion?
Luna's
Or does-
motion, we meet on the 20th?
Yes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
What time in the morning?
Same time, same place?
As long as we
Yeah.
kill that dragon after it's all done,
Okay.
because task force don't last forever,
Well, that's why we're doing it.
They're all
That's why we're doing it, they're done.
They're done.
They're
If they give
done.
it to us, they hand it off to us, they're done.
They're done.
I got a feel it's got 9 lives.
So we'll get
David,
this
you're
report
in
ahead of
charge
time.
of
Okay, so I will make
You got the
sure
big
that
one.
I will touch base with Nancy today, make sure that we get the report, hopefully prior to the weekend, so we have time to digest it. If you need me to print copies and hand deliver them to your homes, I will do that for you.
Email.
Thank you.
And,
That's why God created computers.
well, yeah, so item number 8, we discussed that we have time next December, in the December meeting to discuss the budget, so you should think about what,
If I may on that.
Yeah.
Because that's always been
It's always been
something
a-
I've had to grapple with in years gone by. That is a very important meeting in December with regard to the budget, because it's not just adopting what's been done in the past. This is where you discuss and vet out issues that you feel may be important, that may require budgetary decisions in January and February when they do it. In years past, we normally get a budget on a Tuesday or Wednesday, our meeting's on Thursday, and they're voting on it on Friday. And that's been, yes, kind of standard operating procedure for years. So we've always said, okay, let's have our own plan in December. And when they tell us, hey, you have to have it done, we've at least discussed some important issues. You may say, you know what, I think there should be budgetary monies put aside for a economic development director. That's your meeting, that's your time. Because after that, you're done until the following, January, and it wouldn't be implemented till July of 2017. So that's why that's kind of an important part that shouldn't be overlooked if anyone has those items.
Well, Nancy and Sarah have their presentation. They usually come in request.
They do, and
Yeah.
it varies between, but I think it probably should be that one, so we have some idea. If not that one, they usually do it that January one.
but they should do it in December.
Well,
If they can.
If they can, but we can at least know where we stand on any major discussions, because the one thing that you always get handcuffed on is, you come in January, you see all of a sudden, oh no, we gotta discuss our agenda, you come in and you have a great idea, but it costs $10,000. And he says, well, this is the first I've heard of it. We can't, I can't recommend it, we need to know this, we need to know that, and we don't agree to recommend it in our budget. So I just throw that out there as, if there is anything, and it may go hand in hand with some of the items in the
Task Force
recommendations, so you kind of look at them together for the meeting next week,
Right.
but also for that meeting in December.
Because there may be budget implications to
Absolutely.
us in the task force recommendations that we need to consider.
Right. It may be a website item.
Right.
That we may say, hey, we need a little more money.
Right.
Carolyn may say, we spent this money on photos, but we really could do A, B, and C over the next year. Let's recommend that money be put aside for that. That's a perfect
Well, right,
example.
because
that
one
may
of the
come up.
examples would be,
You have
a budget for writing,
Increased training funds that have been brought up.
right.
Right, exactly. Right,
Simsbury
right.
Meadows, things that were on the budget last year, requests that fell off that
Right.
may be still important projects,
So it may be good to send around what was
I can send around
allocated. I can ask Mark to send around before
Yeah.
the December meeting as well.
what we had last year.
What our budget was,
Was.
yeah, the line items could be broken out as to what we had and then what was put aside, or there might have been some things that we recommended over the course of the year. that
In our
we-
minutes.
That we asked for, monies that we asked for that weren't necessarily in our budget. I think there was at least one. Was it for the website, or?
Well, there was the task force funds, I don't think there was anything.
That was all budgeted.
It was all under the task force funding, I
Okay, maybe it was the year
believe.
before.
You had the one, Lou, you wanted $100,000 for the future, right?
For the
50,000 or something.
For the Meadows.
Yeah, for the Meadows,
Yeah.
yeah. That was one that was discussed. And somebody was
You're
allocated.
talking- That was the joint shared space for, like, Welcome Center and stuff like that.
Yes, that was one, and then there was money that Mark had
For the
discussed
trail.
for the trails
The
and
trails.
everything.
Oh, all right, I didn't know about that.
Yeah. Yeah, so, all right, I'll have Mark send that out, and then I'll touch base with Nancy and Sarah to see if they'd be prepared to make presentations at the December meetings. Okay. Any more discussion on that? No? Any old or new business?
I just have
Okay.
hopefully a quick question. In terms of economic development getting moved to the first selectman's office, is that, what are the mechanics? Is that something that's going to be voted on the 23rd? Is that something that's already?
No, that's a recommendation in the process, it's in process, right?
Yes.
It's in the process group's recommendations. So at our special meeting on the 20th, if that is one of the priorities that we want to emphasize and adopt and, whatever, to the Board of Selectmen, that's up for their discussion on how.
Okay, gotcha. I didn't know if there was a separate thing outside
No,
of this that was.
it's
okay.
part of the process group recommendations.
Okay, gotcha.
And I think logistically, some of that has occurred. Before, Hiram was always at our meetings. Now
Right.
you're seeing Tom Cook. That is probably the major impetus of that plan.
And Lisa
That it's
has
not
already-
Hiram reporting and doing some things for us. It's Tom Cook, so there's more of a cohesiveness with the First Selectman's office right there.
And Lisa started outreach
At
several
least
months ago.
Exactly right, and we are working a lot more closely with Sarah Nielsen than we have in the past, which has worked really well. Lisa's met with people, they said, gee, you know what, if I could really, it'd be great if I could find some grant money for X, Y, or Z. Sarah comes in, she knows that stuff inside and out, so there's a synergy to what's happening right now that is working really well, I think.
On new business, I just want to congratulate Lou and the Chamber on a fabulous spooktacular chili
Oh, yeah,
event.
that's
It was
great.
amazing. We got
Yeah.
there late and they were out of chili. But
We'll correct that one for next
yeah,
year.
congratulations on a great event. And I
Thank
understand
you.
it's again, October 29th.
October 29th next year.
2016, so
Put it in the books.
put it in the books because it was a fabulous event and a great way to promote Simsbury. And nothing but great things were said by everybody who.
We had
I
cooks
spoke to.
from Florida, Pennsylvania, that go to these, from Reno, all around the country, and they loved, number one, they loved the venue. So from kind of that whole idea of economic development, where you bring people in for various events, they see what the Simsbury has to offer is huge. And I spoke to most of them as they were, I went around to each of them and thanked them, and as they were leaving, and all positive things from the venue to how we ran it. So it will, there will be plenty of people there next year, no question about it. So I thought it was
Yeah.
a little unique, a little different, but it was
Great PR for the
well-received
town.
and a good family, adult combination event, so.
New business before we leave?
Yep.
The Hartford, anything new on the Hartford?
Have not heard back from them with respect to finalization of the contract yet. That ought to be happening pretty soon, and I'm actually going to reach out to them and see what I can find out about that.
You're talking finalization of the contract with Silverman or what were the other group?
Silverman, yeah, the Silverman.
For the
group,
closing.
yes.
For the closing.
I'm sorry, thank you,
closing.
Lou, I stand corrected, the closing. We've had a number of conversations with them. They're going to hit the ground running. So this is not a group that's going to let its capital sit still.
Okay, second thing, quickly, anything coming down from our illustrious governor on GE?
That I don't know. That's remains something of a mess.
That's a very big chip.
If anyone wonders why 169 towns hold on dearly to their ability to govern themselves.
That's right. You got it. You got it.
All right. Any other new or old business? No? Do I have a motion to adjourn? Second. Great.
I'm sorry.
See you on the 20th.
Who moved and seconded? Just in case.
Move second.
All right, Alan and I believe.
I'm not familiar with the GE piece.
Moving their headquarters to New York.
Well, it isn't just GE either.
Because we're business friendly.
Brouhaha. Because the collaboration